Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Myeong-shin. I'm the program director with ZPI, and I'm so grateful and pleased to be able to welcome Venerable D. Hong again as our guest speaker this evening. Venerable D is a co-founder and board member of the Engaged Buddhist Alliance. He has also been a volunteer Buddhist chaplain in several state prisons in California since 2013, teaching mindfulness meditation and Buddhist psychology. He's ordained in 3 Buddhist traditions, the Vietnamese and the Chinese Pure Land traditions, as well as the Burmese Theravada tradition. He has a master's and a PhD degree in Buddhist studies and taught at University of the West for 7 years. Last time at ZPI, he presented in April of last year with his student, Irv, who also volunteers at Engaged Buddhist Alliance. They discussed the difficulties, the dukkha, for the incarcerated and post-incarceration individuals, and how the work of Engaged Buddhist Alliance has helped their lives. For this new session, Venerable D will share some of the specifics of the work he does inside the prison walls to help heal the traumas that the incarcerated Dharma sisters and brothers have experienced almost all their lives. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Venerable D. I'm going to highlight you now. And then you can share your screen.
Thank you, Myeong-shin. Thank you, everyone, for showing my talk. Just a quick note, the way that I present some of the teachings, I try to find the common teachings in all the 3 traditions, and just so that I do not, let's say, play favorite in any tradition by any means. Let me see. So you guys can have this PowerPoint if you like at the end or after we are done. I have my Gmail account there. As I was preparing this, I ran into this book that was just published this year, a couple of months ago. It's called American Justice by David Rudolph. And what I found, this is a bit of the excerpt from him. For the past 30 years, more than 2,800 innocent people were sent to prison. And together, their combined sentences add up to 25,000 years. So this is just so you guys are aware of the injustice in our criminal justice system. And along with that, if you haven't read this small booklet, I highly recommend it that you guys read this. Is The Last Breath by Ajahn Pasano. It was about a death row inmate who, when he committed his crime, he actually was present. He was driving his partner to the crime scene, and he was sitting in the car, and his friend or his partner shot and killed 2 persons in the store. However, his partner ran away and got away, but he was arrested. And one thing after another, he was eventually executed through lethal injection. The one thing that I want to highlight is the mindfulness practice that he did when he was on death row, which is something that I have been offering to the incarcerated population inside California's state prisons. So quickly, this is my outline. I will give you guys a bit of the stats on trauma. I will share some of the real stories about people, what happened to them before they were incarcerated. And then I'll explain a little bit of the legend of the shoes, and I will discuss in detail some of the teachings that I share with them. And if anyone is interested, I also offer some insights on how you wanted to start. Now, with I try to find the stat from the CDC, but it's everywhere. So I got this slide from Compassion Prison Project. And basically what is stated is that 64% of the general population in America would have at least experienced some form of trauma or what we call adverse childhood experiences, at least one. With the incarcerated population, 97% of them experience at least one or more ACE. That's why they did what they did. And here's another stat that the majority of incarcerated women experienced or had a history of emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. This stat was published in 2018. And in a lot of the statements that I made, and I do have references just so that you guys can verify. Most of these are not my opinions. I just want to clarify that, I just want to present it to you, some of the stats as well as the evidence or data. So I'm going with 5 stories, I believe. 2 of them are women. And I call her Jay. She was molested when she was a kid by her uncle, who was a policeman. And then as she grew up, she was married to a very abusive husband. And at the time, she had 2 kids when her ex-husband threatened to divorce her. She freaked out, she got drunk, and she hit a couple people, and she was incarcerated for some 20 years. And she was paroled in 2020. The other thing that she had was that while incarcerated, she was always fearful of the COs or correctional officers because they are in uniform. The second one, her name is Trina. She has been out. As she grew up, she witnessed her mom being physically attacked by her father. And as she got married, the same thing. She was physically abused by her husband. And she gave birth to, I believe, 5 daughters. And at a gathering, one of her daughter's boyfriends started to attack her daughter. So out of a mother's instinct, she attacked him. I'm not sure the extent of the injury. It was probably pretty bad because, else she wouldn't be sentenced to 25 to life. And in 2018, she was granted, her sentence was commuted by Governor Brown. And then she was released in 2019. The one thing unique about her is that she believed, she practiced Jehovah's Witness. And as she saw me walking at Chino's women's prison, she was invited by one of the members, Sangha members, to come to my visit. And she did, but she was told by her group that she shouldn't be going to my group. But she did anyway, against their will. And eventually she quit going to that group and she came to my group instead. And she always showed up every Monday, except the Monday that she had to take off to buy food from the canteen. Now on to three guys. This is Cheetah. He became a Buddhist on March 15, 2020. That was the last day that I got into the prison, when just right before we had the lockdown. What happened to him was he was terrorized by his dad and his older brother, who was 10 years older. And every time it happened, his mom took him down to the basement. So because of that, by the time he was 18, he started drinking, ran away, and he committed his crime, and he was incarcerated when he was 18. He requested to become a Buddhist, and I did the refuge for him on March 15. But then in April, his mom passed away because she had dementia, and then she fell into a coma and passed away. So what I tried to do, and he was crying, he didn't know what to do. So I advised him to do the 7-week service just to keep her spirit alive. And also that was one way for him to cope with grief. And he did, but then at the end, he just crashed. After the 49 days, he just crashed and had a depression, and he had suicidal thoughts. So he was sent to see a psychologist who, and then he got improved, and since then he's getting better. His parole day, I guess, is like 3 to 5 years away. His older brother, who is also incarcerated. I call this person TCT. I met him at Solano back in 2016. He was born in Texas. 5 years old, he was forced to drink hard liquor, and he choked, and his dad smacked him and told him to go to his room. So the second time, he was told to drink again, and he braved himself to do it, but then he got drunk. So he was walking around, drunk, and his mom hit him just because, why did you get drunk? And also at 9 years old, his parents were fighting, and he froze because his dad was holding a knife, threatening his mom, because I think she threatened to leave him. And his older brother, who was 11 or 12 at the time, was holding his dad back. And also growing up, he never had a stable school. His family was moving around all the time. And however, he was able to graduate. His degree was industrial engineering. At a wedding party, he was told by his ex-girlfriend's father that he was never good enough for his daughter. So one thing led to another, and he was drinking. So get him to commit his crime. But it has been 8 years, and actually he was supposed to have his parole hearing last week, but it was postponed. So I don't know what's happened to him. Now his accomplishments is tremendous. He is a certified yoga teacher. He also received 2 AA degrees. So hopefully he'll be out either this year or next year. Now, the last person, MNN, because I have to protect their identities. This person, he was born in Boston. His father was a gambling addict. His mom threatened, he gambled everything away. And his mom threatened to leave his father. You know what his father did? His father chopped off his finger and gave the finger to tell this kid at 5 years old to give it to his mom. I mean, that was traumatizing. And he did, but then the guy his father still, went back gambling anyway. So his mom, with 3 kids, she flew from Boston to Riverside and San Bernardino, and at the age of 7, he had a stepfather. And he didn't know how to do math. His stepfather explained it to him. He didn't understand. So his stepfather, used a remote control and smacked him in the back of his head. blood was, dripping. And then, but he was grounded right there too. And the scar is still there. Now at school, in middle school, he was bullied and attacked by a lot of the Latino students who call him Chino. I didn't know what Chino meant until he wrote to me the term Chino. So as he got to, I think junior high, that's when he joined the gang and got his revenge. And he ended up in prison and received an LWOP sentence, meaning that he is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole unless the governor pardon him. So a lot of the folks, this is generally speaking for folks who have been traumatized, they hold up to this fear, anger, ill will, resentment, hatred, and they cannot forgive themselves. And just so you guys know, personally, I was physically and emotionally abused by my parents, but my dad was the worst. From the time that I was born until I was 18 when I left Vietnam, it was constant. It was almost every week. So with all this mental affliction that we hold on to is a bit similar to the second noble truth. And I call it, the second noble truth for the traumatized population. And that is a hindrance for if they wanted to take on the meditation practice as well as their spirituality. Onto the incarcerated, some of the PTSD symptoms that they suffer are hypervigilant, paranoia, mood swing, anxiety, panic attack, and depression. And these are I was told by quite a couple formerly incarcerated friends, who told me of these symptoms, and because they went to see their therapist, and these are the symptoms that they have. And just in case if you guys are interested, I highly recommend it that you guys read these two books. The one on the right is really actually pretty good because it's based on Buddhism, the trauma of everyday life. The one on the right is an excellent read. And I taught Buddhist psychology, the intro class to freshman class, undergraduate. And this is the model that I came up with. You guys know how the Buddha came up with the first noble truth, right? And to me, it is the fundamental, the subtle suffering that we all go through. However, for anyone, a kid who was abused, that is another layer of suffering. For our vets, for people in the military, that's another layer of suffering. Even for people who don't suffer traumas, if they feel a sense of insecurity, that can also be suffering. And then as people grow up, as they get into relationship, depending on the relationships, those relationships can also cause a lot of suffering. And then on top of that, when they have to go to work or when they go to school, they also suffer stress. And I make the top portion red, pointy, is because people think that they are stressed out because of work, because of school, but deep down, if they dig deeper, then it is from the bottom 3 or 4 layers of suffering. It's not necessarily from work or from school. And the other thing that I also want to emphasize is that people coming from war-torn countries, from South Korea, from Vietnam, from the Vietnam War, right, which affected Southeast Asia, Vietnamese, Cambodians, Laotian, and in particular, Hmong people. And at first, I thought I was looking at the trend, right? When because I came from Vietnam, so I know the first wave of refugees came to the US in the late 70s and early 80s. That was the time that there were quite a bit of people were sent to the prison. And then it stopped just because the US normalized relationship with Vietnam. However, in 1990, the US admitted a lot of the former soldiers from the former government. I think it's called HO, humanitarian something. And also the people who came during the second wave, a lot of them were also sent to prison. So I call it these intergenerational traumas because parents suffer traumas. They didn't know it. They did it to their kids. And then this cycle of samsara continues. And I thought that it was just, Vietnam, but I ran into a couple of people who came from the former Soviet unions. And guess what? Ukraine. And I use this name, Mike. He came from Ukraine. He also was sent to prison. And also another person that I just heard from, I use his, Nick, I use a different name, Vic. His father and grandparents are still in Odessa, that's where Russia is attacking right now. So if you look at this trend, right, and so look out for immigrants or refugees coming from the Iraq war, from the Afghan war, from Syria, Sudan, Somalia, and now Ukraine. And you will see that quite a percentage of people from war-torn countries will end up in prison. So basically, from a lot of reports, victims of traumas and wars are the underlying factors leading to incarceration, period. And much of, the major issue is poverty because their parents have no money. So they have to read these folks who committed crimes. They rely on public defenders, and most of the time, they were told to just plead guilty. And I call this, we don't have this term yet, I call it immigrant to prison pipeline, as opposed to, school to prison pipeline. So I don't think that there has been any study on refugees yet, even though, we had refugees from Vietnam. And so this is a similar drawing to the one that I had earlier. I also ran into a lot of our vets in the state prisons. If you go to any one state prison, you will run into quite a few. So that added another layer of suffering, along with the PTSD that the incarcerated suffer. So this graphic is actually for the incarcerated population. And this is from a journal on public health that trauma experiences for incarcerated continue, right? Where incarcerated, the person, I try not to use the term inmate because it's very condescending. So in the prisons, you have men attack men, or you have staff attack men. And that percentage is, I think, 21 to 25%. So their traumas continue on top of what they have gone through, and much of their sufferings lingers, continue, and affect their mental well-being. So put that aside, let's now transition onto some of the teaching. But before I do, I want to use this legend of shoes. I tried to Google it in English, but I couldn't find a lot. But in Vietnam, especially in the Vietnamese Dharma talk, as well as the Vietnamese psychology talk, they use this legend of shoes for to share their talk. What it is that, you know, back then, I don't know how long this was, it's just a legend. So at a time there was a king, you know, he didn't have shoes. His feet hurt when he had to walk barefoot, right? So he ordered to have the road pay for him. But that would mean that they would have to kill thousands of cows to pay. And, you know, not to mention the cost. So what happened was one soldier suggested that the king cut enough leather to the size of his feet, and he agreed to it. And that's where apparently how people start to wear shoes. My point is, in the context of offering Buddhism inside the prisons, is that the US population, or those who come to my Buddhist, you know, my visits, they already have their own religions, their system of belief, their practices. You know, we don't have to bring the whole religion, because as you guys know, it's complicated. You know, we only need to offer them what they need. And it's important to understand their issues and understand their need. You know, then that can help them. We don't have to require them to convert. So Buddhism can be their shoes. And the other issue is most of them only have a GED degree, which is not, I don't think that is really good enough to like offer the study of Buddhism. And a few percentage of those who come to my visit or Buddhist services have some college degree, you know. So this requires skillful means. We can also think of the Buddha's teachings and practices in terms of metaphors, right? As a raincoat, as some mental tools that they can take it out and use it. And just so you know, quickly, I just got a letter from a guy. He just told me that a couple of weeks ago, he had this sick feeling that his mom was dying. And then the counselor called him into the office and had him talk to his sister. As it turned out, actually, his father died. So what he had to do, I mean, he was grieving. As it turned out, he was able to manage grief better, just because he has been learning the Four Truths and acceptance and the practice of the Brahma Vihara. So it helped him how to, and he did cry. And I told him, and most of the men and the women, that it's okay to cry. You know, so on to some of the teaching that I say, I call, you know, healing Dharma. And I try to find the core teachings of the Buddha that are common in all the three traditions. And I try not to emphasize or play favorite to any tradition. Granted that I offer mindfulness meditation. And the other thing that, you know, if I say, oh, this is Theravada, or this is Mahayana, or this is Vajrayana, then I may end up eliminate a lot of folks, because the issue is I don't want to eliminate them or annihilate them. And the other issue that the incarcerated population have to deal with is, inside the prison, they have to deal with the issues of race, religion, and culture, and they are segregated by that already. You know, so I don't want to have to offer three Buddhist traditions, which I will never be able to. So, you know, so this way I can offer something that is common in all the traditions to those who come to my visit. The other thing that I say healing is just because each person could only request a visit to a psychologist once every 3 months. So, and the issue inside the prison is that a lot of them, they don't have trusting friends. So all of that bonded together, what I found is that I offer some of the teachings and practices that can help them to process their traumas. They can do it on their own. And according to Lama Yishi, you know, the Buddha's teaching and practices can be one's therapist. So into some details that I listed here. The Four Noble Truths, I used the one by Ajahn Sumedho, the Eightfold Path, the 3 marks of existence, the 5 aggregates, karma, dependent origination, Brahma Viharas, and mindfulness meditation. Continuing the topic of forgiveness. In Buddhism, we don't have a lot of that, but it's more from the in America, in the Western atmosphere, if I may say. And also because the incarcerated population, they could, because of their traumas, they sometimes couldn't forgive the perpetrator. And because of what they did, they couldn't forgive themselves. And they also, it's not easy for them to ask for forgiveness. But fortunately, there are lots of books on forgiveness. I also bring in the topic of shame versus guilt by Brene Brown. I also discuss the differences between feelings and emotions, just because a lot of folks, they said feelings and emotions, but they couldn't distinguish or couldn't identify or recognize it in their body. I also offer gratitude practice. And this is one of the books that I used. And actually, fortunately, this book is also approved by the Board of California's prison. Now, a bit of the detail into the first noble truth, the dukkha of birth. I thought about this in the past couple years. In the Chinese and Vietnamese cultures, daily, we have been reminded that how our mother carried us, right? And how she was pregnant, and the first 2 months were the most difficult for her body to adjust to this thing inside her womb. And she had to carry to the pregnancy to full terms for most of them, 9 months, 10 days. And giving birth is the most excruciating pain. And once the baby is born, every 2 hours, the mother especially would have to stay up pretty much all night just to feed the baby and to change diapers. And don't forget, back in the old days, in my generation, we didn't have diapers. We used cloth. And the reason that I know is because I had to wash them every day for my younger siblings. And one thing in the first bullet point here is that on the 15th of the 7th lunar month, the Ulambana festival, that's the occasion for the folks in Mahayana Buddhism to honor their ancestors as well as their parents who passed away. But actually, Thich Nhat Hanh, he wrote a small book called A Rose for Your Pocket. And he based it on the Japanese culture as well. You guys can Google and read more about it. I don't think that I have the time to get through it. So going on with the suffering of birth is that I told the men and the women is that, you know, parents, they spent 18 years to raise a child. You know, they also have to probably pay for their kids' college. So to me, I told them, you can't just take a life. And if you wanted to, you need to think about that person's mother. And the story that I just told you guys can be found in the Mahayana Sutra. Is titled the Sutra about the deep kindness of parents and the difficulty of repaying it. Now, just a bit, this is supposedly scientifically proven. I shouldn't say it's proven, but it was argued about the probability of being born as a human. Dr. Ali Benazir, he calculated that, you know, a person is to be born as a human is 1 in 400 trillion. But then he used the Buddha's sutra, the Pugala Sutta. The chance of someone being born as a human is 1 in 700 trillion. I also relate this report to the folks inside. One thing that inside the men's prison is that if someone whose crime involves a kid, sexually, he is the target for killing or attack. And what happened that I correspond with someone that I haven't met yet. He told me that there were twice that he wanted to attack this guy who is labeled as a sexual offender, but because of what our correspondent, he stopped. I mean, I asked him, like, so is it better? So it's okay to kill 2 or 3 people, but it's not okay for you, but it's not okay for the guys to molest a kid, so you have to take him out. So that was, and I'm being sensitive to everyone, but I just present him, this inquiry. So that was the first noble truth. With the topic of karma, I try to make it simple because it's not easy. I try to use the Eightfold Path, that our karma comes from our mind, from our speech and action. And I use Gunaratana's book, The 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness. The other book, the Brahma Vihara, basically, and I like these 2 books. It makes it easier for me to explain and also to practice inside the prison. Traditionally, with the Brahma Vihara, to practice the Brahma Vihara is more effective after the mind is settled, meaning that you can't just sit and just practice loving kindness or compassion. You have to let the mind, you have to sit a while to let the mind settle, and then include the practice of loving kindness or compassion or appreciative joy or equanimity. It does help. And I also explain the nature of the Brahma Vihara is that it started from the self to the family, to friends, and also to difficult people. I shy away from using the term enemy because inside the prisons, a lot of folks have enemies. The other book that I also use is by Ajahn Pasano. It's titled Abundant, Exalted, Immeasurable. And basically, according to the Buddha, the practice of loving kindness can remove much of any of our major karma in this lifetime. And also, when one practices loving kindness, one can sleep better and happier without dreams. The list, there are 11 of them. Onto the context of addiction or the topic of dependent origination. I used the only 5 elements in the 12 links of dependent origination. And it's just because inside the prisons, drug and alcohol are plenty. How could someone on death row die from drug overdose, right? So I include the let me see. You look at you guys look at this. So through contact, we give rise to feeling. From feeling pleasant, unpleasant, especially pleasant, it gives rise to craving. from craving to clinging, from clinging to becoming. And I try to relate the message to the folks inside the prison if they can best, abstain from consuming alcohol or heroin, drug. I also use this topic, kintsugi, which is a Japanese term. And for a lot of folks inside the prison, because they were broken, right? And they are, each one of them is reduced to a number, A and something. And they also identify because of the number, because of the clothes, because they have to wear prison clothes. So a lot of them, they identify with what they did or their thoughts or their feelings. And they also hated themselves and also ashamed of themselves, and they couldn't forgive themselves. So I also bring this teaching in just to know that, there's no such thing, there's no one that is perfect. We all have our flaws, and at the same time, we also have our strengths, so you are not broken. You shouldn't be thrown away. But for a lot of them, they couldn't get out of that mentality. In terms of onto mindfulness meditation, I offer mindfulness meditation because they can practice anytime, even during walking or when they're waiting in line. One person that I ran into who was a volunteer, he said, "Oh, I don't do guided meditation." And what happened was afterward, no one showed up. The reason is with this population, we have to understand that their mind, their traumas, they can't sit still in silence for too long. And if you let them sit for too long, they can't do it. So guided meditation does help. I learned this lately too, start with a smile, because I told them, hey, a smile doesn't cost you anything, and no one can take away from your ability to smile. And then they did smile, most of them. When they meditate, when their past trauma come up, I usually, and it can trigger certain emotions, right? And I would ask them to stop and do something else just so that they are not re-traumatized. If they can can be present with that experience, that encounter, then they can process it. And, eventually they can integrate that trauma into their daily life. This is just, I haven't run into this problem, but this is just a note of caution. Sometimes people could, flip out if they are overwhelmed with their traumas. So I also explain to them that if you notice anxiety or anger, you are in the hyperarousal zone. But if you freeze or numb, then you are in the hypoarousal zone. Something just so that they can take with them, just so that they are not re-traumatized because of the mindfulness practice. Now, for some who have ADHD or anxiety or restlessness, I offer them a mala, a wrist mala, which you see in the picture. I ask them to hold one and breathe in and go to the next one as they breathe out, and just keep repeating that. Or they can repeat a mantra or their prayer. On the term of using the mala, I noticed that this is, in 2018, I ran to a guy who couldn't sit still. So I gave him a long 108 mala. He was actually able to sit through it for 6 months because I only see him once a month. And after that, he didn't need the mala. So that's the efficacy of the mala. And a lot of them asked me to bless it. I said, yeah, I said no. I told them, oh yeah, it has been blessed. It has been blessed, but I would say I refrain from offering any blessing or protection just because it's not. I don't think that it makes sense. It's not practical. And also some other volunteers, they offer yoga or qigong or somatic practices as well. I also, this is not a great book to read for some folks who couldn't sit still, such as, what is his name? I forgot his name now. He's on death row. So he was instructed by his teacher, a Tibetan Lama, that fear is just a thought and thoughts cannot hurt you, thoughts cannot kill you. And through that, he was able to meditate. It took him a while, but he was able to meditate. And also, just a quick note, there is a population that is labeled EOP, Enhanced Outpatient Program. That means that these folks, they have some form of mental illness, either ADHD or depression. Usually, and they have to be on medication. They take medication like 5 or 6 times a day. They are functional, but I would only meditate with them no more than 10 minutes. I would talk more. I would have them talk more, just so that you don't want anything to trigger the symptoms. The other thing about the people who come to my visit is that most of them are lifers, meaning that they serve from 15 to life or 25 or 20 to life. And with that, they have to prepare for parole. And usually that process takes about 1 to 2 years to prepare. So my meditation, in particular, mindfulness meditation, can help them to look through into the nature of their mind, what happened to them, just so that they can have a deeper understanding of the root causes. And they also have to identify the root causes as well as the causative factors of their crimes. And according to some of the parole commissioners, they said the Buddhist men have the most insights. And also, fortunately, Tun Han's books, 9 of them are approved by the board. So I have ordered a lot of them. And with the pandemic in 2020, 2020, I end up sending a lot of the books to them because I couldn't visit. The other thing that I also do is the day-long meditation. And here, usually the schedule is from 9 until 4 p.m. And we would sit, and in between, we would have 10-minute break for them to stretch or do walking meditation. And usually it would be done in silence. The last hour is open for them, for them to share what came up in their practice. For the Daylong Retreat, we would read the Taking Refuge and the 5 precepts. And I started this as well, is that name a good quality about yourself or 2. I also ask them to say, go to another person that you don't know that well and ask and name a good quality about that person. This is one way for them to be able to see the good nature that they have, and also for them to be able to socialize and see the goodness in others. So on the day long, usually we will start sitting for half an hour, and then to 40 minutes, and then to an hour. I don't enforce the rule of silence. That's because it's a chance for the men to bond, to also talk about something that is deeper. At Lancaster State Prison, I have been holding day-long meditation from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So it was quite a long time, and they were able to meditate for the whole day until 7 p.m. That's when we broke the silence, and for them to share their insights. Another thing that I also do is at the end of the meditation is I dedicate the merits. But one thing that I do add is, may everyone in this institution, meaning the prison, including all the staff and COs and their families, to be safe and healthy, be peaceful and happy, free of stress, free of danger. As we all know, inside the prison, there are two sides, the COs and the incarcerated. Is the line is very clear. And by offering this line, I hope that they can try to look at the CO's perspective, just so that there is more of an understanding or some form of empathy can be developed. So what I meant by healing, right? So through all the teaching that I have listed, it allows the incarcerated, even a traumatized person, to recognize their trauma, their suffering. And also that they understand how they have caused suffering to the victims, as well as to their family members. So, and with the practice also of gratitude, forgiveness, and Brahma Viharas, they can forgive people who hurt them. They are able to openly express their remorse or shame, and they can get through their daily life inside the prison. The one thing, and they don't hold on to ill will or resentment or hatred against the perpetrators or against themselves. The one thing that is tough for them to do is forgiving themselves. And a lot of them, would say, they take it one day at a time. And if you listen to the talk shared by Irving from last year, that's what he would say. And that's what a lot of the guys also said. So to learn more about what their insights are, I recommend that you guys go to our website and read the newsletter. There's no need for me to repeat it here. So let's say that you are interested, anyone, you can contact the prison's chaplain or community resource manager directly. It would be good if you get a letter from an incarcerated person. That way they cannot, the staff cannot deny you. And you have to fill a form that is like more than 20 pages. You have to take the TB test. And now I guess you have to show proof of the COVID vaccines, right? And it takes about a month to be clear, and especially by FBI and DOJ. So you have to be very, very patient. In terms of going inside, when you have to deal with staff and CO, it is a completely different realm, if I may say. You just have to follow the rule. They are there for a reason. Don't go against the rules. And do ask for clarifications, and don't expect any special treatments. Your title, your PhD, whatever it is, your privilege, put them outside of the prison. You are just think of yourself as just a human being. You are in it, to share the message of the Buddha. That's my view. Just one note, the reason that I said that, because I knew of two former volunteers who, they're not from our nonprofit, who try to argue, who try to do this and that. They had a difficult hard time, and one of them was denied entering the prison. So here are some of the insights that I have in the past almost 9 years. A lot of these folks, they like to meditate just because of the silence inside the chapel. And it gives them a safe space, because whether they live in a dorm setting or in their cells, there is always noise, loud noise, and people screaming. So the chapels offer them the silence that is much needed. And only 1 or 2% of the incarcerated population come to Buddhist services, and most of them are not Buddhist. And they come from all religions, from all ethnicities, all cultures. And the thing is, you know, each visit, we only have 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I would only talk for about 15 minutes. I give them printouts, and it's okay to give them papers. And I would, at the end of the meditation, I would encourage them to talk or share the issues or share the insights. You can donate books, but it must be approved. I rarely set up the altar. You know, I use the charm, which I will strike it here. That's the one that I use to start and end the meditation, as well as between the guided meditation. I didn't do much chanting other than reading, like I said earlier, you know, the triple gems and the 5 precepts. Don't ask what they did, and this is, you know, in the training by the prison. Don't ask them about the religion, because I had a guy who came out now when he was a Christian, but he came to my meditation. But after I left, and the other volunteer, you know, told him like, why are you here if you are a Christian? So he got caught off guard and he didn't bother to return. I don't ask them to bow. I never asked them to convert. If anyone wanted to become a Buddhist, I would ask them to write me something just so that I can understand the reason. Don't reveal where you live, your family, or your vacation plan. That's what we are told from also the prison training. And it's good to share your personal experience or trauma just so that they can relate to. And I would also tell the guys that what is shared in the group stay with the group. It's better. And most of them, you will find that they're genuine and honest. And most will share their traumas or even, you know, what they did. And on average, I would meet and spend some 2 to 3 years with the people inside, and then they move on. They either transfer or go home. So in conclusion, what I'm sharing with you is only one of the issues that we have, which is mass incarceration, you know, among other social issues that we faced. So what if you are interested, you know, like what is your interest? You know, how can you prevent or reduce suffering? Get involved, you know, get in good trouble, in the words of John Lewis, the late John Lewis. Criminal justice reform and prison reform are good, but we are putting out the fire. How can we prevent the fire? That's my point, right? And I would say focus on the trouble use, because if we can prevent a kid from committing a crime, we can stop so much suffering and grief. And schools is a starting point, because that's where the teachers would notice the kids who are troubled. And the poor neighborhoods, the immigrant communities, that's the prison pipeline, like I said earlier. And if you still not, if you still are hesitated, let me give you a figure. This year, the cost of incarcerated someone in California is $106,131. You know, if that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what would. And with that, I am done with my talk, and thank you for listening. Just a quick note, if you guys like my PowerPoint, let me know. I'm more than send it to you.
Yeah. Oh, that's so generous. I mean, you know, Venerable D spent like the whole month preparing. It's so wonderful. So if you can just email me, and I'll send it to you.
Sure.
So, any questions from so much that was offered?
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I arrived late, and I may have to leave early because I'll be, Myoshin knows I'm going to present to our board of directors to start an affiliate with Zen Peacemakers, and I'm excited about that. But I'm also excited to be here because we do have a prison Dharma group at our Zen Center, and thank you for all the helpful information. I would like to see that PowerPoint as well. Our group, there's 4 of us, and we've had, of course, aside from the struggle of COVID, we have, there's just two groups that go in, a Christian centering prayer group, wonderful people, and our group. Our the chaplain who's coordinating this, we notice that seems to be almost I would say a prejudice, and we aren't informed of things that the other group is, and we're sometimes denied access for reasons, and it's there's some frustration. That maybe it's just me, but how do you overcome the bureaucratic things or the personal things surrounding staff personnel that may be resistant to Buddhist groups in the prison?
You have to let go of, you have to be very, very patient. Just like the Buddha said, patience is the highest virtue. They could say this and that to you. You just have to learn to be thick-skinned, put aside your ego, because you're doing it for the incarcerated person. You're not doing it for you. You're doing it for the Dharma. You're not doing it for yourself. So I would say, and whatever that they say, you just have to, let it go in at one ear, let it go out to the other. And like literally bite your tongue, because no matter what they say, it's not worth it to even respond or anything. It's not worth it at all.
Because you're risking being even more excess, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, like
back,
keep your head down and just go away. Because otherwise, if you try to say something or try to do this and that, they can make you miserable, or they can cause problems with the guys or the women inside, or they wouldn't be released. You could wait there for 2 hours and no one would come to the chapel. It happened to me quite a few times, and that's the reality. That's what I said. It's a different realm when you enter the prison ground.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Venerable, in one of the slides, you mentioned that you use a book about feelings and emotions, and people can't tell the difference between them. And is that an issue? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we use the terms loosely, but we don't understand it. Especially the folks inside, because they suppress their emotions, right? They don't cry, especially not in public. If you cry, trust me, that's weakness. You would be attacked. So what I told them is feeling is initiated or comes from contact through our senses, and it initiates in the mind. And then when we add like or dislike to it, and it becomes emotions. And because our nervous system is etched into our body, so when the feeling would trigger certain emotions. So one way to recognize that is to, let's say, if you experience anger, look at, come back to your breath. Check in with your body temperature, your hands. Are you holding your fist? Your sweat, the body temperature, the blood flow, the face turning red. All of those are the products of emotions that especially folks inside, even out here, they didn't recognize. But I would tell them those are the physiological signs or symptoms that you can tell when you feel anger, just so that you don't react, you don't talk. Because inside the prison, if you for the men and the women inside, if you talk back, you're gonna be punished, disciplined, period. There's no tolerance for that.
Wow, I never thought of emotions as the next stage of feelings. Wow, that's really insightful. So you basically teach them to self-supervise.
Yeah, to look for the sign, to read the signs in their body. Those are the emotions run in the body, so look for those. And when coming back to the breath, if their breath is out of whack, they know that they are in trouble, or they know that their emotions run wild.
Wow. Yeah, because I was abused as well, and abused children tend to kind of bottle up this frozen state.
Yes.
Call it frozen state. So the emotions are frozen. So to melt those emotions, sometimes it can trigger so much. And you talked about triggers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had any, groups, members of the group that come to you kind of act out of that melting process?
Most of them told me, and of course, a lot of times it happens in seconds. And most of them, after with the practice, they're able to catch the anger or their reaction, just so that they don't react to the situation or to the person. So a lot of them do.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing: the acceptance. I found a book on emotion as well, and I explained to them, accept, you have whatever it is that you have to accept it. But you don't have to like it, or you don't have to like it or agree to it. But when you accept it, you will have a sense of, you're able to look for new direction, new perspective. But if you don't accept it, then your mind is stuck in that rejection mode and you can't come up with anything. So that's another thing that I learned last year from reading.
Wow. So you have a lot of readings to yeah, I see your posts on the Facebook. There's so many books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any questions? I'd like to direct any questions for Venerable D. Daniel.
I was wondering if there are any studies about meditation's effect on recidivism, and if it would maybe make it easier for meditation groups of any sort to be in prisons and be fostered. I was in prison for a very long time myself, and I think that's one of the only reasons I made it was meditation. And with the recidivism rate that you showed us, I don't know anyone that I've ever met in prison that meditated that has recidivated at all. So that would be interesting if someone did a study, and then it would cause all of this to be easier for groups that teach meditation to prisoners.
Thanks, Daniel, for sharing your story. I haven't run into a lot of those, just because they are not easily done. Because let's say people who come out of prison, they don't keep in touch with us. So like, how do you find those people? And because, they come out, they're busy working. So I haven't seen a lot, but I'll try to Google them. Yeah.
Maybe if we partner with the research center or something, yeah, that would be really interesting. So that's your second PhD project, Venerable.
Oh, I don't have time for it. I mean, once we reopen, we are now, like next week, I have 4 prisons next week. So I'll be on the road next week.
You go as far as Blythe, right?
Yeah.
That's what, like 5 hours drive?
3.5 without traffic is 220 miles each way.
Wow. And that's once a week or once a month?
No, that's once a month. That's once a month. I mean, I wish I could fly, That's why, like I said in the presentation, that it takes time to, if I want to set up the altar, this and that, and with 90 minutes, I don't have time, and you have to wait for the man to be released. By the time that they release, you lose like 15 minutes already. So like, how you can't even set up the altar, and I didn't, and I just met them, I start talking, and then we meditate, and then they talk, and then we get out. And because in each prison they have 4 yards, or 4 groups of men, or 4 sanghas. So I go A, B, C, D from 8 to 4 p.m. And that would take the whole day.
Wow. Yeah, and if there's a lockdown, you go there and it's like lockdown.
Oh yeah, you just go home, and you don't even say anything. There was no need for me to say anything, but that's the nature of prisons. Even I talked to Ajahn Brahm, he used to volunteer. He also used to go to prison. One point he went to Singapore. And you would think that Singapore is supposed to be, because they have a lot of Asians, so they are supposed to be Buddhist or something. But you know what? A lot of the folks running the prisons were Protestants or Christians. And he went there. They said, "Oh, we're busy." Boom. He just left, and he didn't live in Singapore, right? He traveled to Singapore, and he just wanted to visit. But no, yeah.
Wow.
That's how it is.
You must have changed a lot of energies on the way and on the way back.
Yeah. Oh, I drink green tea latte. That keeps me awake. That's my addiction. Just so you guys know.
Unless you guys have any questions, how did you choose these prisons, in Southern California? How did you I know one of them is women's prison that you took me once in Chino. But how did you pick them, and how did you get in touch with them? And
Okay. Well, they found me actually thanks to Danny and Shirley. They have been visiting prison for more than 20 years. And this is back in 2013, when Dr. Lancaster said that he wanted to teach Buddhism, that's when I went to the meeting and I signed up, and I was one of the 3 people who signed up. And that's how I ended up going to Chakawala, which is in Blythe. And then I started from one prison, and then Chino's women prison is only 33 miles from my house. When I found out that Chino's women prison has the highest suicidal rate in America's prison. And that's why I got kind of upset. I was acting on emotions now. So I contact the community resource manager, and she let me in just because she denied the former volunteer to return because he did a lot of things. So that's how I started it in 2016. And a lot of times, I get requests. So it depending on the location. So because Anwood is right next to Chakawala, so I happen to go there also. And Anwood is the 3rd Saturday, Chakawala is the 3rd Sunday. So when I go next weekend, I drive out there Friday, I stay at the hotel for 2 nights, and then Sunday night I would drive home. So it depends on the location, but because I live down here, so it has to be around here. And I think I would start at Chino's men's prison because there was a guy that requested me as well.
Oh, he requested you.
Yeah, so, and they cannot deny because thank goodness to First Amendment, the prison cannot deny it, even though they could try, but that's why the chaplain contacted me, and that's how I was able, that I did the paperwork, so hopefully I can go in a couple weeks.
I would like to share my experience
Sure,
to start in 1995, and the main reason for us to visit the prison is because we got the request by the prison from Calipatra prison at that time. At the time, I have no experience at all, and I don't have enough data, just like Venerable D did, and he's fully information to us, and I was just don't know anything. I go in there and just want to learn. So I really want to kind of inform you that you are considered to do the volunteer, and I'll give you some information. And like myself, I know nothing at the time. And the main important thing is, just like when Buddha said, smiling is very important, because the smiling is what they need inside the person. because when I was in there, and then one of the inmates told me that we have to walk against the wall because you are afraid somebody will attack you. But somehow after 20 some years, and nothing happened to us, and it's a very safe place, and then they won't try to hurt you. They really want to see you because they want to break up the routine inside the prison. And when I first over there, and I don't know what to do, and just smiling and do the meditation, and talk about something to make them happy, and so that's how I started. And then I learned over the years, after all these years, and I learned how to start to um, about the Buddhism to bring into them, and then about the starting with the life of the Buddha, and then gradually talk about the Four Noble Truths. That's what Venerable D did, because we had to bring them. They are not just they are not the person who have dukkha inside a prison. We all did. We all do actually in our world. We are, our mind outside the prison is in the prison also. So kind of assisting them, having the same situation as them, and then I gained empathy from them. So after that we become friends, and then I love to go to the higher maximum prison, because when I go there next time they will be there, and then we will not just become a student and teacher, and then we become good friends. Right now we have a lot of friends coming out after the parole, and then they're coming out, and we still keep in contact right now. And even though it is a long drive to the prison all day, you spend a whole day and start at 4 o'clock in the morning and get up there and then come home around 8 o'clock. Even though our body is so tired, but our spirit is really got live up. And every time when I come back, I have my retreat. I treat it as my retreat. So for the person for anyone of you want to thinking about to volunteer, this is a very good practice. Not just for the inmate, it's for us too. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so you guys know, Danny said, the people in maximum security prison, they are in constant lockdown. They can't get out of their cell. So to be able to be released out of there to the chapel, they love it. Level 3 and level 4 in California, level 3 and level 4 are maximum security prisons. In level 2, people, because they have served time and they are ready to go home, you don't have as a big group as you would in maximum security prisons. That's how it is.
What works of bodhisattvas? It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Yeah.